So you've seen dyed crystals and you've seen enhanced crystals, but what does that really mean? Does that mean you just bought a fake rock and it does absolutely no good and you need to toss it? No. So if you're curious, come on in. Let's talk about some crystals. Fake crystals and dyed crystals and man-made stones are all very independent ideas and concepts. Fake crystal is when somebody gets like resin or not real crystal materials. They're claiming it's a quartz, but it's not quartz. It's actually resin or glass or something, silicone. Who knows what they're putting in these molds anymore. Dyed crystals are real, natural stones that still hold their original crystal properties, that now they just have an extra color added to them. And this can be done in a multitude of ways, including actually injecting dye or soaking the crystal in dye, all the way to electroplating, where they actually put a multitude of different minerals and metal coatings on the stone to give it that little bit of extra color, that little bit of extra vibrancy. Now, does this affect the stone at all? Let's take a deep dive into the different ways that you can color a crystal and the different effects that that does and does not have on your stones. And we'll go ahead and switch over to camera mode now. Now, this guy, if it would care to focus, you're still going to have all of your normal details that the crystal itself naturally has and occurs. So you've got your banding here. So that's automatically going to be an easy determination that this is in fact a banded agate. Even though the coloring, we've kind of got a deep purplage going on. Now this is actually a great example, if this would mind focusing, of what we're looking for here. Do you see these really heavy, dark, thick bands of color? And then how you have a random streak that if we were able to really see, and we hope that my beautiful editor Calista can really zoom into that and see the veining pattern, that you actually can tell the colorization going between the quartz bits of this agate and the bands. When we look back up here at the top, you actually have a fairly translucent bit of the agate here, and boom, there we go. You've got some nice thick bands of that extra color where the color has basically congealed into a thicker part of the crystal. And then over on this side, you can still see that thin veining where you can actually follow the path that the dye took into the crystal. Now this isn't just a put color on top of, they actually soak or inject the crystal with the dye to get it following in, and you can actually see the path of the dye is the path oftentimes that the crystal had minerals flowing through it to be able to form that stone. Now sometimes we're going to go through a couple of different colors. Sometimes you can really find and piece by looking at them. Now this one, we've got that insanely bright, hot pink going on here. If you weren't able to tell just based off of looking at this color and saying that doesn't look like a natural color that Mother Earth would ever make, look right up and you're looking for any abnormalities, I want to say, against where you've got, this is a quartz and agate combo. Now this is going to be one of those kind of gummy agates where it doesn't really have banding going on, as you can see in the back. This is most likely a very boring, very plain tan to light brownish color. And humans don't like earth tones. Now, I know your immediate reaction was, I love earth tones, I love greens and stuff. But when people, humans as a whole, see a green or a brown or tan or even a lot of times different versions of red when they're not like super pretty satin reds, they'll get overlooked and they never get purchased. And so the sellers started doing a dye on the crystals to try to bring open that color, so that when you looked at it and you're like, oh my goodness, look at all these amazing colors. And these guys are often sold for $2 or something, very, very cheap. Very, very easy to get a hold of. And because they're little agates, they're very, very common stone mostly. You've got agates, you've got quartz, and you've got howlite are going to be your most common, most popular colorization pieces like this. Now you can get others. I have seen it where they actually dye rose quartz a deeper pink, because rose quartz, you'll get pieces that'll naturally, and in the camera this is going to look super white. In person it's got a really, really pale pink. But people are like, hey, why not add a little bit more pink just to really try to sell this poor little rose quartz here? Let's see if I can flip this to a white background to see if that gives any... Yeah, that really didn't help. It kind of blends straight in there. So I don't have one with me, but they will take a very, very pale rose quartz sometimes and just give it a little extra poof on some pinkage. Let's look at a couple others so that we can really get a feel for. This one is a great one that's going to come across. There we go. See if we can get some focus. See how that's got that nice translucency in the back. This again is going to be one of those gemmy agates where you've got like the natural would have been kind of this off brownish, not even quite brown, but almost bluish, almost grayish. To the human eye, it would have been a very easy pass-overs, and people just don't pay attention to these colors. And so by adding this little pop of pink, it creates an interesting effect. And especially sometimes it'll even bring out, this agate has a little bit of a flowering agate going on the bottom. You've got a little bit of another mineral that was growing into the crystal, and that dye, that coloring, can really help bring out and accent the stone. So overall, let's see if we can find another. The more you look at these guys and the more you start to see, and you're like, oh look, right there, I've got that thick banding that she was talking about. And if we zoom in a little bit, you can see the veining. You can see how it literally looks like, imagine like a IV of dye going through the crystal's veins. And sometimes you can really see that patterning very, very well on some of these guys. The more you come to recognize these and you play with them a little bit, the more you'll instantly be able to pick one up and say, oh yeah, that's dyed. But that's okay, because again, this is not a fake stone. This is a real stone with a color enhancement. And sometimes, like this little Botswana agate here, you see how you've got that eyeball effect going up and out? The dye actually really helped get into each of those little bitty veins. Personally, I'll stare out for 20 hours straight and never move. And other people are like, what the frick are you looking at, hun? But this one, you can see kind of almost that eyeballing effect. A big question you're going to get is, does this dye hurt or damage my crystal? And the answer to that one is no. Does it diminish the value? Used to be 5-8 years ago, dyed crystal even more expensive because heck, it's pretty colored now instead of that ugly color. But now people do seem to be getting more into the natural stone colors. So I would at this time say yes, the dye does reduce a value. Does it hurt the crystal? Does it block the energies? Does it change any of that? No, it does not. A crystal is going to vibrate at its natural, happy frequency no matter what. Sometimes it can get blocked to the point where you have a energetic flow movement that has seized on the crystal and stopped that flow and that vibration from being able to happily go through. And that just takes a little cleanse. The crystal is naturally always going to be trying to get itself back to its natural happy state. They just want to be them and their truest selves. So after you get a dyed crystal, and this is something I always do when I get a batch, I will immediately cleanse them all out, and I'll go searching for, in the coloring process and in the aftermath of the coloring, did this crystal experience a kind of a trauma that may have created an energetic block? Or was there a trauma forcibly placed upon it by a human that looked at it and said, "You're fake, I don't want you anymore," and kind of helped block that crystal's energy? And after a quick crystal cleanse, you can get it back to its original happy vibrational frequency. It's always trying to get back to that frequency. Sometimes it just needs that tiny bit of extra help. Do follow the channel because we do have other videos specifically on how to release those energy blocks, how to purify your crystals, and along that nature. Now this one I just want to talk about a second because I do find fascinating. This is actually a carnelian that they had dyed. Now here on the back lot, you can really see some of this natural, deep red, brownish colorings coming in and through. And you can see and tell that this is natural based on the coloring, but also based on the transparency. And right there we go, where the dye has actually stopped. They did dye it a greenish color, but because of the density of this stone, you've actually got a really cool little window going on here. And then you've got a big white natural color piece where the dye doesn't look like it affected this side at all, really. It just gave an extra deep hue on this side. Now again, if you were able to see it in person, it's definitely a lot easier to tell. Right here, you can actually see some of that green vein dye coming up and into the window just a little bit. And yeah, I don't know how well you're really going to be able to see this on camera. But the more you play with these guys and the more you start to understand, the more you'll be able to recognize your natural greens, your natural agate green colors from the color enhancement pieces. Cute this little Botswana is. See, I'll just pick those out of everywhere. You got your little green tuxedo. He's got all dressed up, ready to go. Okay. So, is the dye hurting it? No. Is the dye affecting the properties? No. You still have all of your main original crystal properties in that stone. Because again, that stone wants to and will naturally stay at its original frequency. The dye in this case is 100% just because it gives a little extra color. Do you like it? Yes? No? Maybe some pieces you're like, you know what? I'm not usually a dyed crystal fan, but this one, let's just say this color is phenomenal, and I love the energy, and that's abso-freaking-lutely okay. If you love it, if it resonates with you, go with it. Don't force that feeling of, oh, well, it's dyed, I'm not even allowed to touch it, onto the crystal. That's what's going to bring your weird, icky energy to it, and then block that crystal energy. Again, easy, just clear it straight out. Making noise. That one really is freaking adorable. Actually, maybe... Okay. Again, on that idea of As long as it's sold as a dyed crystal and it's not sold as something else, keep an eye out especially for dyed green agates being sold as malachite, because some of these, like this beautiful little Botswana agate, is actually a really, really good first impression representation of a piece of malachite. This is the part where it can be bad or bothersome, is if this guy were sold as a piece of malachite, the malachite would absolutely be more expensive than an agate. Even an agate, you're probably, now a lot depending on the market, so do not quote me here, but you're, just for comparison, you're probably looking $2-3, way under the 5 mark. For a malachite, you may be looking closer to that 5+ mark, depending on quality and location. So as long as the seller's being honest, and as long as you love this energy and you connect with this little energy, that's exactly what you're looking for. Because frankly, who doesn't love this little tuxedo? He's so cute. Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about aura quartz. Now this is going to be a little bit different than your dyes. This is an actual coating on the outside of the crystal, and it does affect the energy in a lot of cases. Some people say that it is actually going to add additional properties depending on the colors that are coated on this quartz or other stones. Again, a lot of different stones can be used, and this one you do have to be a little bit more careful. Because it is an outside coating, it's going to be a little bit harder to tell if you have a real natural quartz or if you have a piece of resin or other materials that have started coming out a lot recently. Especially big box store type crystal shops where you go to and they've got chains around the country, or they're just like the not quite higher crystal end shops, I guess. I really don't know how to phrase that, but do just understand and be aware that some of these are real quartz, and sometimes you can get it sold as aura quartz, but it's really closer to aura resin, or even aura glass. And there are a lot of really freaking cool molds for resins right now that you pour your resin into, and it already maps it and makes it look like a piece of quartz. But your biggest piece is you're not going to have those interior flaws that real true quartz has, all of the planes and flaws. Let's look at a couple, and these guys that we're going to look at today are real quartz that all have a different coating or a coating on them of some kind. Now, I don't have any titanium quartz, so Callista, if you would mind pulling up a photo of some titanium quartz so we can really see the difference on that one, because that's going to be an entire new ballpark. These aura quartz pieces are going to come in all sorts of colors and options, but your biggest right there, you're looking for that, I call it an oil spill rainbow, because crystals oftentimes will have a natural rainbow, but that rainbow right there is your oil spill kind of rainbow that you see it on the sidewalk, and you've got your yellows and your really strong. If you've ever been out in a parking lot and seen a fresh oil spill on a sunny day, you know exactly what I'm talking about right there. So that's going to be a huge telltale sign of your aura coating crystals. These guys, again, do have a lot more of an effect on their stone than a regular dye job. A lot of times they'll put a quartz, an extra coating, and then the aura coating on there to help it stick a little bit better. And again, especially as I'm looking at these guys, something else you want to be very careful for if you are after an aura quartz piece, make sure it's not painted. Because unfortunately, they're now fakes for these aura quartz. And this one I will straight up call a fake, because they literally take this paintbrush, I don't know what they're doing, but it's not a true full coating. And if you look at it from the sides, and again, this is not going to be one, but as an example, you'll see up here you've got a really thick coloring of this supposed aura quartz, but it's literally flaking off in your fingers. This is fake. It is most likely not real quartz. I think I've ever seen maybe one that was ever a real quartz after they did this to it. And see, we've got a blue aura quartz. Now you can to me, as I've been working with these, very clearly see that extra gloss. Now it's not the reflection from my really bright light over here that we're looking at, it's that extra rainbowing pattern, and it kind of almost makes the crystal give a little bit more of a glass-like effect. Now this one over here, this is going to be a completely natural, no dye, no anything, aquamarine. Just so that you can really see that color comparison and how, as they're twisting and tilting, you get a little bit more of that rainbow flashing going on from the aura quartz over here, and really nothing from the natural aquamarine. And then again, you can see a huge difference in your blue aura, ocean aura, all mermaid aura, all millions of things that you will find this crystal under. We've got a couple of others, like the watermelon aura quartz. This one is going to be something that you do very much have to pay attention to, because you have watermelon aura quartz, which is 100% normal quartz with that coating that we've been talking about. But you also have a piece called watermelon tourmaline that, unfortunately, from lack of knowledge, I believe, more than anything else, I have seen a lot of people sell this watermelon aura quartz as watermelon tourmaline. Watermelon tourmaline, something this size, can easily go upwards of $20. And honestly, I believe I am currently lowballing it based on watermelon tourmaline's value, but again, I can't quote on any exact pricings for it. But make sure, if you're buying watermelon tourmaline, if you're buying watermelon quartz, if you're buying watermelon aura quartz, you know what you're doing. Again, on that note, watermelon quartz is going to be dyed into this coloring pattern. Oftentimes it'll be a crackle quartz that's dyed into this color. This one again is watermelon aura quartz. It does have that aura coating on there. And you can see you've got your pinks, you've got your reds, you've got your greens, kind of a watermelon-esque color. That'll help. Oh, not really. That's going to conclude this session of dyed crystals and aura quartz crystals. If you have any other questions, comments, or if you want to know about your crystal or something specific, please do let me know in those comments, and I'd be happy to make an actual video for that to really help you learn what you're trying to learn and be able to step into that motion. Again, the more you learn, the more you play, the more you'll be able to understand and know. And nobody picks this up overnight. And it's okay to start from a learning process and a learning basis. And if you've purchased dyed crystals, and if you've purchased aura crystals in the past, and you're just barely now finding out that it's not real, that it's not its original state, is what I use as original state. It's not fake. You're not losing the crystal. You still have that crystal and you still have its energies. 90% of this is going to be, how do you treat it now? Play with your energies, enjoy them, love them, and give them that attention, and really understand and be able to welcome yourself into that piece of learning. Till next time.